And welcome to Narativ Live and a special report as we are premiering our Trump grift clock. We are now looking at the clock, tough to say, about to breach $5.1 billion. This is a significant number, of course. It's up just $100 million in 10 days. If you can imagine what that is, that amount is, this is $100 million that have gone into the Trump coffers, into the Trump family pockets, just in 10 days, based on their crypto, on their real estate holdings, these freebie real estate holdings they get from all these foreign nations, and indeed, all the licensing deals that they have amassed during their presidency. Now, this is just since they were inaugurated, just since Trump was inaugurated, January 20th last year. They've been able to amass now $5.1 billion in grift, in just pure take-home pay for nothing. This is money that belongs to the taxpayer. This is money that belongs to, and here we go, we're about to cross it, I think. Money that belongs to the taxpayer, money that's being grifted out of the US Treasury. It's never been done before. We have never seen, there you go, $5.1 billion now is the Trump take-home grift for all the corrupt deals that they've done on crypto, real estate, and on these licensing deals. That's all that we've included in the Trump grift clock, because there's a lot more, of course, than that. If you look along the bottom of the clock here, you can see there are $400 million in that Qatari jet that was handed to them as a gift. There's all those pardon money and fines and restitutions, $1.632 billion in fines and restitutions, over $24 million, but way more in these no-bid contracts that have been given to their friends and family, and $1.12 billion in the value of the Trump media stock, $1.12 billion. So you can add all that up and you'll come up with a much higher number than we're presenting here today. But what we are presenting is $5.1 billion is the official number on the Trump grift clock, as we count as much money based on their first year revenue of all the grifting they've done. This family, particularly Donald Trump, has pocketed using his government powers, using the diplomatic will and goodwill of the United States around the world in order to get foreign governments to pay for this kind of stuff. This is where we're at, $5.1 billion. I'm going to remove the clock from our view right now because I don't want to share with you something else that we've been able to put together in just the last few minutes here about how much money all of this really means, because it's, it's not necessarily evident to everyone what $100 million can buy you. But let me help illuminate for you what, in fact, you can get for that kind of money. So this is the presentation I think we're looking at. Where is it? Here we go. So for this, sizable amount of money, $5.1 billion, that's $100 million in just the last 10 days that this family has been able to accrue. About $116 every second. If you can imagine what that feels like, getting $116 in your pocket every second, well, that would be enough to make you happy and to believe that the golden age is here. Maybe when they say the golden age is here, they mean the golden age is here for them. Because at one point, it's $116 every second. You can certainly tell they are loving that at the Trump family. Christmases, at their holiday homes, at their yachts, at all their fabulous living. And that's what that money is going to pay for as the President of the United States steals from the American taxpayer and the Treasury. There's another interesting stat. Every 12 minutes, the grift clock shows us that the Trump family is swallowing up an entire American family's yearly income. That is a stunning number. Even, as I read it out loud, it's hard to fathom that in every 12 minutes, in other words, it's now 5:03. We started at 4:59. By the time we get off the air here, an entire family's annual income would have been swallowed up by the Trump regime, by the Trump family, who are then putting it in their pockets. It's a stunning number, and it's certainly one that makes you take note of where we're at with this regime, which is taking money from the poor, taking money from the people who need it, and taking money from the Americans whose money it is, and stealing it for themselves. In fact, when you look at the full $5.1 billion, that is the annual income of 61,000 American households. In other words, a city the size of Fort Lauderdale. Imagine they didn't have to work for a year because they got the income of $5.1 billion, which would fund 61,000 families for a year. And that, of course, is not what's happening. These 61,000 people and families are not getting paid, but the Trump family is getting paid the $5.1 billion as of right now. The 1.4 billion meals, 30 meals for every one of the 47 million Americans facing hunger. In other words, if the Trump family didn't pay themselves these $5.1 billion in order to enrich themselves and their family, they could, in fact, keep 47 million Americans who are facing hunger out of hunger by giving them 30 meals. 30 meals for an entire month. That $5.1 billion can feed the 47 million Americans facing hunger for an entire month. But no, the president of the United States, they choose to pocket the money for themselves into the Trump pockets, the Trump family pockets. They could have provided with that $5.1 billion Medicaid coverage that would have saved 944 lives, 28,500 years of human life. That's what $5.1 billion can provide. And they could have insured 189,000 American families for that $5.1 billion. That's a full year of family health coverage for 189,000 American families. But rather than do that, rather than help families become healthier, get health insurance, be fed, be saved, any of that stuff, the president of the United States is pocketing the money for himself, for his families, for his misadventures in luxury, for his over-the-top lifestyle, for his own personal benefit. He's taking money from the American people, from the American U.S. Treasury, and benefiting only himself. And that is indeed what $5.1 billion buys. A family's yearly income is just gone in 12 minutes. According to this rate, 61,000 families' annual income have now been swallowed up by the president of the United States as his own slush fund, his own personal grift. 1.4 billion meals, 944 lives, and 189 families could have been insured for that amount of money. And that is really what we're trying to make sure people understand is what's going on with this fanatical government that is stealing from the people it's meant to represent, stealing from the people it's meant to protect. Instead of that, they are, in fact, helping themselves to the money that belongs to the American people, to the American Treasury. And the figure could not be any more stark than it is right now. When you look at the clock again, this is a remarkable sight to see $5.1 billion as the Trump grift clock ticks above $5.1 billion for the first time, giving us a look at how fast and how greedy and how lecherous this government run by this president really is, taking $5.1 billion out of taxpayers and into their own companies, into their own benefit, providing themselves with a life of luxury while millions of Americans suffer every single day. That is our report on the Trump grift clock. We will be back whenever there's a big, meaningful turn of this clock into another number. We want to make sure that it stays front and center for everyone as we head into these elections. How much money the Trump family is pocketing themselves while you at home might be struggling to pay for your groceries, might be struggling to pay for your gas at $4 a gas now, a gallon gas. Things are very hard for the American people. We know it, we see it, we go through it as well. And the Trump family is stealing $5.1 billion for their own greedy needs. That is Narrative's coverage today of the Trump grift clock. Thank you for being here. We always appreciate your support at narrative.org. Whether it's free or paid, make sure you subscribe and stay close to our coverage as we head into the most contentious election in American, potentially world history. Thank you for being here. Have a great night. I'm Zev Shalev.